7 practices for peace in any circumstance. Have you ever noticed how some people maintain an extraordinary stillness within chaos? While the world crumbles around them, they stand unwavering, almost untouched by the storm. They don't fight against the current. They don't dissolve into panic. They simply hold their ground with a strange, magnetic calm that makes you wonder what they know that you don't. Now imagine if that person was you. If instead of being swept away by every crisis, every emotional upheaval, every unexpected turn, you could access a center of peace that nothing could disturb. What would your life look like then? That's where the power lies, in the ability to find peace, not despite circumstances, but regardless of them. The truth is that peace isn't something that happens to you when the world finally decides to be kind. Peace is a practice, a formula, an inner technology that you must master. And Buddhism offers us 7 ancient practices that have survived thousands of years precisely because they work. These aren't lofty philosophical concepts, but practical tools for the modern battlefield of stress, uncertainty, and constant change. Right now, you're probably living in reaction mode, responding to everything life throws at you, getting caught in emotional undertows, surrendering your power to external forces. You've been conditioned to believe that your state of mind depends on what happens to you, but this is the greatest illusion, the deepest trap. So I ask you now, looking straight into your eyes, how much longer will you allow circumstances to dictate your peace? How much longer will you give away your power to things you cannot control? Perhaps it's time to reclaim the sovereignty of your mind, to master the formula of unshakable calm, because peace isn't found. It's built deliberately, practice by practice, moment by moment. You've been taught that resilience means enduring, pushing through, gritting your teeth until the storm passes. Since childhood, you've internalized the idea that strength means never showing weakness, always having the right answer, always maintaining control. But here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you with this clarity. True resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about knowing how to put yourself back together when you inevitably break. This misunderstanding of resilience has created a prison where you exhaust yourself trying to be invulnerable when you were never designed to be. You push away emotions that need to be felt. You reject parts of yourself that need integration. You deny your humanity in pursuit of some impossible ideal of strength. And then you wonder why you feel so fragile inside despite all your efforts. Do you know why? Because resilience isn't a wall you build, it's a capacity you develop. It's not about becoming harder, but becoming wiser about how you use your energy, where you place your attention, how you relate to your own suffering. Buddhism understood this centuries ago, offering practices that don't deny reality, but teach us how to dance with it skillfully. People who appear resilient aren't immune to pain. They've just mastered practices that allow them to process that pain differently. They don't avoid the storm. They've learned how to find the eye of the hurricane. They maintain perspective when others lose it. They stay rooted when others are blown away, not because they're special, but because they've cultivated specific inner technologies that anyone can learn. But the truth is that real resilience comes at a price, and the price is comfort. You must be willing to sit with discomfort, to face what others avoid, to develop a relationship with uncertainty rather than fighting against it. The question is, are you willing to sacrifice the illusion of control for the reality of inner peace? Are you ready to stop being a victim of circumstances and become the architect of your responses? So now stop and reflect. What has your current strategy for finding peace actually delivered? Has reactivity served you? Has avoidance protected you? Has resistance made you stronger? Or is it time to consider another path? One that has guided human beings through suffering for thousands of years. Before answering that, we need to understand one essential thing. Why do we lose our peace so easily? Why do we get knocked off center by the smallest disruptions? The answer lies in what Buddhism calls attachment, not just to people or things, but to how we think life should be. And that is what we will explore in the first practice, because your peace begins the moment you release your grip on how reality should be and embrace it as it is. The first practice in our resilience formula is radical acceptance, not as resignation, but as the ultimate power move. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes not from pain itself, but from our resistance to it. When something difficult happens, you don't suffer merely because of the event. You suffer because you're fighting against the reality that the event has already occurred. You're arguing with what is, and in that argument, you will always lose. Imagine you're walking through life with clenched fists, gripping tightly to your expectations, your plans, your image of how things should unfold. Now imagine what happens when life inevitably deviates from this script. The tighter you hold on, the more painful the deviation becomes. But what if, instead, you walked with open hands? Not passive, not resigned, but receptive, adaptable, ready to work with whatever arises. Radical acceptance means looking reality straight in the eye and saying, I see you. I may not like you. I may work to change you, but I will not pretend you don't exist. This is not weakness. It is the foundation of all effective action. Because you cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot transform what you're too busy denying. How many problems in your life have persisted precisely because you're unwilling to fully face them? How much energy do you waste fighting against what has already happened instead of responding to what is? This isn't about giving up. It's about freeing yourself from the exhausting delusion that your resistance can change what's already occurred. When you practice radical acceptance, something profound shifts. The energy you are using to fight reality becomes available for responding to it wisely. The suffering that came from denial begins to dissolve. You move from, this shouldn't be happening, to this is happening. Now what's the wisest response? And in that shift lies the seed of your peace. Start small. Notice when you're resisting simple realities, traffic, weather, other people's behavior. Practice saying, this is how it is right now. Feel the immediate release that comes with this acknowledgement. Then gradually apply this to bigger challenges. Not to resign yourself to circumstances that can be changed, but to engage with them from a place of clear seeing rather than wishful thinking. Radical acceptance is the doorway to the second practice, being gentle with yourself. Because once you stop fighting reality, you can stop fighting yourself for being human. The second practice in our resilience formula goes against everything you've been taught about strength. In a world that values harsh self-criticism as the path to improvement, Buddhism offers a radical alternative: self-compassion as the true foundation of resilience. The way you speak to yourself in difficult moments isn't just background noise. It's the difference between breakdown and breakthrough. Think about how you respond when you make a mistake, face a setback, or fall short of your expectations. Is your inner voice a harsh critic, a relentless judge who uses shame as motivation? This voice isn't the truth of who you are. It's a learned pattern, often absorbed from others who themselves didn't know any better. And while you may believe this voice makes you stronger, it actually depletes the very resilience you're trying to build. Buddhist wisdom understands what modern psychology has only recently confirmed: self-compassion, not self-criticism, leads to greater resilience. When you meet your suffering with kindness rather than condemnation, you activate neurological patterns that regulate emotion and reduce stress. You create a safe inner space where growth becomes possible. Imagine having a friend who, in your darkest moments, meets you with understanding instead of judgment, who reminds you of your strength instead of cataloging your weaknesses, who sits with you in pain without trying to fix or judge you. Now imagine becoming that friend to yourself. This isn't self-indulgence. It's intelligent self-relation that builds your capacity to face difficulties without breaking. Start practicing this second element of the resilience formula by noticing your self-talk. When you're struggling, pause and ask, would I speak this way to someone I love? If not, Consciously shift your inner dialogue. Place a hand on your heart and speak to yourself with the same warmth you would offer a dear friend. Remind yourself, this is difficult right now, and that's okay. I'm doing the best I can with what I have. This practice doesn't mean you avoid responsibility or growth. Rather, it creates the emotional safety needed for honest self-reflection. Because the truth is, you cannot hate yourself into becoming a better person. You cannot shame yourself into resilience. The path to strength runs through kindness, not through the valley of self-contempt. And as you develop this relationship with yourself, you'll notice something remarkable. Your capacity to face difficulty expands. What once would have shattered you merely bends you. What once would have defined you simply passes through you. And in this growing flexibility lies the third practice of our resilience formula, honoring your body as the temple of your soul. The third practice in our resilience formula recognizes a truth often forgotten in our disembodied culture. You cannot separate mind from body. Your physical vessel isn't merely carrying your consciousness, it is actively shaping it. Buddhism understood this integration centuries before. Modern science confirmed that physical practices directly impact mental resilience. In moments of stress, crisis, or emotional turbulence, your body responds before your thinking mind even registers what's happening. Your breath shortens, your muscles tense, your nervous system shifts into survival mode, all of which then further amplifies your mental distress. This cycle becomes a feedback loop that can spiral out of control unless interrupted at the physical level. Have you noticed how difficult it is to think clearly, respond wisely, or maintain perspective when your body is in a state of tension? This isn't weakness or lack of mental discipline, it's biology. Your thoughts arise from a brain that is part of a body, and that body has ancient wisdom and warning systems that will override your highest intentions if ignored. This is why Buddhism places such emphasis on embodied practices, not as accessories to mental training, but as essential foundations. Mindful breathing, walking meditation, conscious relaxation of the body. These aren't spiritual luxuries. They're practical tools for reprogramming your nervous system's default settings. When you honor your body as the temple of your soul, you begin by listening to it. What is it asking for? Rest, movement, nourishment. How is stress manifesting physically? Where are you carrying tension? Your body speaks a language of sensation, and learning to understand this language is crucial for resilience. Simple practices make profound differences. Regular rhythmic breathing sends safety signals to your brain. Intentional relaxation of tense muscles releases stress hormones. Movement processes emotions that might otherwise stay trapped in your tissues. Proper rest restores your resilience reserves. This isn't about achieving some perfect physical state. It's about working with your body instead of against it. It's understanding that care for your physical vessel isn't separate from spiritual practice. It is spiritual practice. Because how can you maintain peace in chaos if your body is constantly sending alarm signals to your brain? Start simply. Set reminders to check in with your body throughout the day. Notice your breathing pattern and consciously deepen it. Relax your shoulders, jaw, and forehead, common places where tension accumulates. Find movement that brings you joy rather than punishment. Prioritize sleep as a non-negotiable foundation of resilience. Your body is not an obstacle to overcome on your spiritual path. It is the very vehicle of your journey. And as you learn to honor its wisdom, you'll find yourself naturally moving toward the fourth practice in our formula, setting attainable goals through the middle path. The fourth practice in our resilience formula addresses a fundamental cause of suffering, the tendency to set goals that either overwhelm us with their impossibility or underwhelm us with their insignificance. Buddhism offers the concept of the middle path, not as compromise, but as the skilled navigation between extremes that leads to sustainable growth and lasting peace. Modern culture pulls us in opposing directions. On one hand, hustle culture demands constant striving, promising that happiness lies just beyond the next achievement. On the other hand, certain interpretations of spirituality suggests that having goals at all is attachment that leads to suffering. Both extremes miss the wisdom of the middle path. Setting attainable goals, ones that stretch you without breaking you, is actually a compassionate practice. It acknowledges your humanity while honoring your capacity for growth. It creates a sustainable rhythm of effort and rest that builds resilience rather than depleting it. It allows you to experience the confidence that comes from steady progress, rather than the despair of constant failure or the stagnation of unchallenged comfort. Think of attainable goals as stepping stones across a river. If they're too far apart, you'll fall into the water, unable to make the leap. If they're unnecessarily close together, you'll expend too much energy taking tiny steps when you could be moving forward more efficiently. The middle path asks, what is the optimal challenge that serves your growth without crushing your spirit? This practice begins with honest self-assessment. What are your true resources right now? Not what you wish they were, but what they actually are. What would constitute genuine progress without triggering the perfectionism that leads to burnout? What small, consistent actions would move you forward without overwhelming your system? When setting goals, remember that resilience isn't built through dramatic transformations, but through sustainable rhythms. The oak that withstands the storm doesn't grow to its full height overnight. It develops strength through countless cycles of growth and integration, pushing just beyond its current capacity, and then allowing that new expansion to stabilize. Apply this wisdom to your goals. Break larger aspirations into smaller milestones. Celebrate progress rather than fixating on the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Allow for the natural oscillation between periods of stretching and periods of recovery. Trust that steady, sustainable progress ultimately takes you further than erratic bursts followed by collapse. The middle path isn't mediocrity, it's mastery of the rhythms of growth. And as you develop this skill, you'll naturally move into the fifth practice in our resilience formula, embracing change through positive adaptation rather than rigid resistance. The fifth practice in our resilience formula addresses the greatest source of human suffering: resistance to change. Buddhism recognized what we often forget. Impermanence isn't just a philosophical concept, it's the fundamental reality of existence. Everything changes, nothing remains the same. And your relationship with this truth determines your capacity for peace. Look around you. Your body is not the same as it was 10 years ago. Your relationships have evolved. Your circumstances have shifted. Your very thoughts and feelings are in constant flux. Yet how much energy do you spend trying to freeze certain aspects of life in place? How often do you cling to what was or resist what is becoming? This resistance isn't wrong, it's human. We're wired to seek stability and predictability. But when this natural tendency hardens into rigid attachment to particular outcomes or states, suffering inevitably follows. Because no matter how tightly you hold on, change will have its way. The only question is whether you'll flow with it or be broken by it. Embracing change doesn't mean passive acceptance of whatever happens. It means developing the flexibility to work with reality as it unfolds, rather than fighting against its inherent fluidity. It means recognizing that your resistance to change often causes more suffering than the change itself. Consider how much anxiety comes from trying to control what cannot be controlled. Notice how much tension arises from wishing things were different than they are. Observe how clinging to past conditions prevents you from engaging fully with present possibilities. This is the suffering that comes not from change itself, but from our relationship to it. Buddhism offers practices to develop what modern psychology calls psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt to fluctuating situations while maintaining connection to your deepest values. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up preferences. It's about holding those preferences lightly enough that when reality takes a different turn, you can adjust without breaking. Start practicing this flexibility in small ways. When plans change unexpectedly, Use it as an opportunity to exercise your adaptability muscles rather than defaulting to frustration. When facing transitions, acknowledge both the loss of what was and the potential of what might be. When uncertainty arises, practice staying present with the discomfort rather than rushing to premature certainty. The resilient mind is like water, able to take the shape of any container while maintaining its essential nature. It knows when to stand firm and when to yield. It understands that security comes not from unchanging conditions, but from confidence in your ability to adapt to whatever arises. And this adaptability naturally connects to our sixth practice, engaging in activities that nurture your inner life. The sixth practice in our resilience formula might seem obvious, yet is profoundly neglected. Deliberately engaging in activities that restore your inner resources. Buddhism recognized what modern neuroscience confirms, that peace isn't just the absence of disturbance, but an active quality that must be cultivated through specific practices that replenish rather than deplete. In today's achievement-oriented culture, even our self-care often becomes another item on the to-do list, another source of pressure rather than restoration. We've forgotten the art of true replenishment, activities engaged in not for their outcome, but for their intrinsic quality of nourishment. Activities that don't just distract us from stress, but actively rebuild our capacity to meet life's challenges. Think about how you spend your discretionary time. How many of your activities truly restore you? How many simply numb or distract you? How many actually deplete you further while masquerading as leisure? The difference matters, because not all free time is created equal when it comes to building resilience. Activities that build genuine resilience share certain qualities. They involve presence rather than escape. They often engage your senses, bringing you into your body rather than further into rumination. They frequently involve a flow state where self-consciousness falls away. They connect you to something larger than your immediate concerns, whether nature, creativity, community, or spirituality. For some, resilience-building activities might include time in nature, where studies show stress hormones decrease and nervous system regulation improves. For others, it might be creative expression, which activates integrative brain functions that counter the fragmentation of stress. For still others, it might be contemplative practices that build the attentional muscles needed for emotional regulation. The specific activities matter less than their effect on your internal state. The question is, does this activity leave you more resourced or less? Does it expand your capacity or contract it? Does it connect you to meaning or distance you from it? Does it numb you to life or awaken you to it more fully? Begin by auditing how you currently spend your time. Notice which activities genuinely restore you and which merely distract. Then deliberately create space for those replenishing experiences, not as luxuries, but as essential practices for resilience. Even small doses of genuinely restorative activity can significantly impact your capacity to maintain peace amid challenges. This isn't self-indulgence, it's intelligent self-stewardship. Because resilience isn't an unlimited resource. It must be consciously replenished, especially during difficult times. And this replenishment naturally connects to our seventh and final practice, cultivating gratitude as the ultimate perspective shift. The seventh practice in our resilience formula might be the most transformative, yet most misunderstood. Gratitude, not as a positive thinking exercise, but as a radical shift in perception that alters your entire relationship with difficulty. Buddhism recognized gratitude not as denial of suffering, but as a powerful lens that reveals the fuller truth of any situation. In challenging times, your attention naturally narrows to focus on what's wrong, what's threatening, what needs to be fixed. This evolutionary tendency helped our ancestors survive immediate dangers, but when chronically activated in modern life, it creates a distorted perception where problems expand to fill your entire field of vision, while resources, opportunities, and moments of beauty disappear from awareness. True gratitude isn't about forcing positive emotions or pretending difficulties don't exist. It's about widening the aperture of your attention to include what's going well alongside what isn't. It's recognizing that in any moment, multiple truths exist simultaneously: challenge and opportunity, pain and beauty, loss and presence. Gratitude practice ensures you don't miss the resources available to you, even in dark times. Consider how different the same circumstance feels when viewed through different perceptual filters. A job loss viewed only through the lens of threat feels overwhelming. The same situation viewed additionally through gratitude might recognize the skills you've developed, the relationships that support you, the unexpected openings that now become possible. The situation hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. Research confirms what Buddhism has long taught, that gratitude practice literally rewires your brain's default settings. Regular gratitude reduces stress hormones, increases neurotransmitters associated with well-being, and strengthens neural pathways that notice positive aspects of experience. It builds the psychological flexibility that allows you to acknowledge difficulty without being defined by it. Begin cultivating this practice through simple daily rituals. Each morning, name 3 specific things you're grateful for, avoiding generalities, and instead focusing on particular experiences, relationships, or qualities. Each evening, reflect on moments of goodness you experienced, regardless of how small. During difficult times, challenge yourself to find what remains intact, what continues to support you, what beauty persists alongside pain. Gratitude isn't about ignoring reality. It's about perceiving it more accurately and completely. Because the truth is, every life contains both suffering and joy, both challenge and support. By training your mind to register both, you develop the balanced perspective that is the foundation of true resilience. These 7 practices: radical acceptance, self-compassion, honoring your body, setting attainable goals, embracing change, engaging in restorative activities, and cultivating gratitude, form a complete resilience formula that has supported human beings through suffering for thousands of years. Not as abstract philosophy, but as lived practice that transforms your relationship with difficulty. As we explore these 7 practices for finding peace in any circumstance, I'm reminded of a book that profoundly transformed my understanding of resilience. In When Things Fall Apart, Heart Advice for Difficult Times, Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron offers wisdom that feels like a gentle hand guiding you through your darkest moments. She writes, "To be fully alive, fully human, and completely awake is to be continually thrown out of the nest." This perfectly captures what we've been discussing, that resilience isn't about avoiding difficulties, but learning to move through them with grace and wisdom. If you find yourself resonating with these practices I've shared today, Chodron's book provides a deeper exploration of how to stay present when everything within you wants to shut down or escape. The book doesn't offer quick fixes or spiritual bypassing. Instead, it provides practical wisdom for transforming your relationship with difficulty. For those who wish to continue this journey beyond our time together today, you'll find a link to Chodron's work in the description below. But whether you explore these ideas through her teachings or through your own practice, one thing remains clear: these practices work. Their efficacy is confirmed by both ancient wisdom and modern science. The question isn't whether they're effective. The question is whether you'll commit to them consistently enough to experience their transformative power. Because resilience isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you practice day by day, moment by moment, choice by choice. So I ask you now, are you ready to move beyond merely surviving difficulty to actually transforming through it? Are you willing to invest in these practices, not just when crisis strikes, but as daily training for the inevitable challenges life brings? Are you prepared to build peace, not as a fragile state, dependent on perfect conditions, but as an internal capacity that remains accessible regardless of circumstances? If this message resonated with you, if it awakens something that recognizes its truth, write "I choose peace" in the comments. Let's see how many are ready to commit to this path of resilience. And remember to subscribe to Moon Mind Temple for more wisdom that transforms not just how you think, but how you live. The journey to unshakable peace isn't about escaping storms, but about building an inner sanctuary that stands firm through any weather. These 7 practices are the foundation of that sanctuary, not as temporary shelter, but as your permanent home.